When you've got a century-old hockey franchise, how do you decide what was the most important, memorable goal of all time? Well, candidly, somewhat arbitrarily. But I'd nominate a goal scored 70 years ago today. It was April 21st, 1951, when Maple Leafs defenseman Bill Barilko scored in overtime to defeat the Montreal Canadiens and give the Leafs their 4th Stanley Cup in 5 years. Yes, kids, once upon a time, the Leafs were a dynasty. But that magic turned tragic later that summer when the 24-year-old Barilko flew off for a fishing trip and disappeared. It would be more than a decade later before the wreckage of his plane crash would be found in Northern Ontario. Joining us tonight to remember the most iconic goal in Leafs history, we welcome, in Minnetonka, Minnesota, Frank Klicinich. He is Bill Barilko's nephew. In Dundas, Ontario, Suzanne Primo. Her grandfather, Gentleman Joe Primo, coached the Leafs to that Stanley Cup victory. She's also on the board of directors of the Ontario Sports Hall of Fame. In Ajax, Ontario, Kevin Shea, who 10 years ago wrote the definitive book on the defenseman's life called Barilko Without a Trace. And in Brampton, Ontario, Mark Farah, the world's #1 Barilko collectibles aficionado, which we see all over the background of that picture. And Mark, we look forward to finding out more about that. Listen, I'm grateful to all of you for coming together on this 70th anniversary of the most iconic goal, I would suggest, in Maple Leafs history. And to get us into the mood, who better than Foster Hewitt to take us back? Sheldon, if you would.
Here's right in front of Meeker. Meeker went by the net. Sutter's out in front. McNeil fell right in front again. Watson shoots. Meeker to score! Barilko! Barilko has won the Stanley Cup for the Leafs. Barilko shoots it into the net while McNeil was left all by himself. The Toronto Maple Leafs are the world champions.
And thanks to Hockey Time Machine's Paul Patsko for that iconic and wonderful play-by-play of Foster Hewitt's from so many years ago. Frank, I've got to ask, when you hear that, what goes through your mind?
Well, I get shivers hearing it. I love seeing the clip, and it's a huge sense of pride to be able to participate on the anniversary of that 70th goal. Your
mom was Bill Barilko's kid sister, and his nickname was Bashin' Bill Barilko. Does that give us some sense about what kind of player he was?
He was a tough cookie. He made sure that all his players, his teammates, were protected, and he was not afraid to muck it up.
And we should point out as well that this goal was scored, of course, 7 years ago today. You were born a couple of months later, so you never knew your uncle, did you?
That's correct. I've only known him through Kevin's book and my mom's scrapbooks.
Understood. Suzanne, who was behind the Leaf bench coaching that night?
Oh, that would be someone I would know very well, would be my papa, Gentleman Joe Primo.
And you did know him, right?
Yes, yes. He died in 1989, May of 1989.
I think, if memory serves, that all the members of that winning Leaf team got a special souvenir for winning that game and winning the cup. Anything you want to lay on us right now?
Yes, actually. Everyone got this, which is a beautiful silver box that has an embossed Stanley Cup. Can you see it all right?
Yeah, we sure can.
And it says Joe Primo, 1951 on the bottom, but all the other players, including Bill and Ted Kennedy, everyone would have received this. And it's a wonderful collectible piece, and I absolutely adore it.
Beautiful. Kevin, Barilko, of course, was an instant hero when he got that goal, but 4 months later, he decided he wanted to go on a fishing trip with his dentist. They flew off in a small plane to, I guess, northern Quebec, and they didn't make it back. You chronicled all of this in your book. Give us your best recap of what people think happened on that way home.
Well, so the goal was a melancholy goal. You know, it was happiness, but we know that the sadness followed if we've chronicled the story. So August 24th, they fly up to Seal River in northern Quebec. They have a wonderful fishing trip, apparently, looking for Arctic char, which was a real favorite. The irony, of course, is that Bill Barilko loved to fish. He sure didn't like the taste of fish. But anyway, on the way back, they stopped. They stopped at a little place to refuel along the way, and they were warned at that point that the weather wasn't very good, that maybe they should stay overnight. There was lodging that was available to them there. But Dr. Hudson insisted, hey, we're going to be fine. We have to get back. We've got some commitments. And that was the last that they were seen until all those years later on. They encountered terrible weather with perhaps a heavy load, with perhaps some reckless flying, and they ended up in the unforgiving forest north of Cochrane, Ontario, not to be seen until that plane was found all those years later.
Now, Frank, I gather he left on a Friday, and your grandmother, Bill's mother, tried to get him not to leave. What was that all about?
That Friday was considered bad luck in our family because that's my grandfather, Steve Barilko, died on a Friday. And when Billy told my grandmother that he was going to go on this fishing trip before training camp opened, she said, "No, please don't go. This is not the right day to go. And you got to go to training camp soon anyway, so don't go." And Billy said, "Nothing's going to happen, Mom." And the next morning, as he was leaving, he went in to say goodbye to his mother, and she was so angry with him, she didn't acknowledge it.
Frank, when it became clear, as days turned into weeks, that Bill was not coming home, what did that do to your family?
Well, I know it was traumatic. My grandmother never stopped hoping and wishing and praying that Billy would somehow miraculously come out of the wilderness, that he had amnesia, that he would show up. And she held on to that dream until we finally realized that the plane crash site had been found in '62.
Well, all right, Kevin, pick up the story there if you would. It would be 11 years later before the wreckage was found. How, in fact, was it found?
Well, just in the most ridiculous sort of way. It was a helicopter, June 6, 1962. A helicopter sees a glint of metal or a glint of yellow or something that was a little bit untoward in those forests. He returned back to his office and said, "Yes, saw something there. I don't know what it was." And what happened was the gentlemen were saying, "Well, I wonder if it might be the Barilko Hudson plane." So he did a little bit more research and went back on June 15th, 1962. And sure enough, they found the spot once again. It was not easy to get to. So what they did is they circled the spot and dropped toilet paper out so they could come back and find it a little bit later on. And so that was the way that they were able to find the crash site, which certainly was there. The pontoons were quite visible at that particular time. So it just happened to be synchronicity that the right time of year, the right day, the right pilot flying at the right time was able to see the crash site.
Now, Suzanne, I know gentleman Joe Primo was your grandfather, and therefore, you would have had different conversations with him than I would have. I'd have talked hockey with him all the time. You'd have talked family, perhaps. But I wonder if you did ever have conversations with him about that team, about Barilko, about the goal, about the disappearance, all of that kind of stuff.
Well, I can tell you this, Steve, that my Uncle Bob Primo, who is the son of Joe Primo and my dad's brother, told me about how he was actually at the game and was sitting there with somebody pretty special that could have been on the ice at the same time, but wasn't, due to a conflict of interest, and that being that he just happened to be his Uncle Jim Primo, my great Uncle Jim Primo, who was the brother of my grandfather, Joe Primo. So as an NHL referee himself, he was not allowed to actually ref the game. And maybe luckily so, because we can't have that goal being called back for a conflict of interest.
Right on. Now, how is it also, Suzanne, follow up with this. You got a pair of Bill Barilko skates at some point in your family's life. What's that story?
Well, that's very true. So during that season, now I know that Papa would say that every player would get 2 to 3 pairs of skates a year. Now, whether these were the pair of skates in question, we don't know. But Papa came home one day in 1951 and gave a pair of skates to my Uncle Bob, the same one sitting in the seats who watched that infamous goal. And he used them playing at University of Toronto while studying for his engineering degree. And he said, "I skated on those till the rivets fell out." So yes, indeed, who would have thought, right? But amazing to be in such infamous shoes.
And Suzanne, where are those skates today?
You know what? I'm not certain where those skates are today. I'd have to quiz my Uncle Bob about that. But I don't know that they made it too far after that, because if the rivets fell out, then at that point they may not have been as useful, even though they may be they are a collector's item today.
Well, Uncle Bob's 89 and a half, so you make sure you get to him and get back to me on where those skates are, because I want to know. Kevin?
I will tell you that.
Okay. Kevin, again, take us back to the day. Bill Barilko, was there a woman in his life at the time?
Well, in fact, there was, but there seems to be a little confusion. In doing the book, I interviewed a number of his teammates, and they said, well, Bill was quite a man about town. He was well known, and he liked to squire beautiful young ladies as well. But there was one particular lady that I want to bring attention to. Her name was Louise Hastings. And Louise Hastings was definitely somebody that he was dating. Maybe she thought maybe even engaged. He'd given her a ring at one point, not an engagement ring, but a ring of promise. And so she had gone up to Timmins a couple of times and had met Bill's mother, rather, and the family. She was waiting for Bill to come home so they could spend a little bit of time at her cottage on Lake Simcoe before he went off to training camp and did his other responsibilities. So Louise Hastings always maintained a passion for Bill through her entire life. She passed about 5 years ago, but even when I was interviewing her before her passing, she still had pictures of Bill Barilko on her nightstand in her bedroom. It was a love story beyond compare.
Mark Farah, I want to thank you for your patience, because now that the story is in place, we are going to have a fun time going through the cornucopia of collectibles that you have. Are you in your basement in Brampton right now?
I am right now.
It looks like a museum in there. Why don't you give us just a sense about what kind of Barilko collectibles you've got?
Well, I mean, to break it down, I think there's over 150 pieces in total. Everything from over my one shoulder here that you'll see, that's the most of the remains of the fuselage. You might recognize the two seats that are facing the camera right now. The one, well, they both had the bodies of Barilko and Hudson in them, which laid for 11 years. Below that, I've got the picture of the original plane, the actual plane. On my other side of my shoulder, just beside my head here, you'll see that's the program and ticket stub from that game. That's the only known ticket stub in existence from that game. And then above that is a picture of Bill when he played with the Hollywood Wolves. It's one of the only known team-signed photos as well. On the other side of the you'll see another program on the other side there. That's from Bill's very first home game when he scored his first NHL goal along with Sid Smith. In the display case is the remarkable story and the remarkable puck, which was owned by the Donahue family in Hamilton right from the moment that goal was scored until just about actually a year ago today.
Hold on to that story about the puck. I want to come back to that. But you dropped something in the middle of that answer that I would just want to follow up briefly with Frank on. Okay, here's Bill Barilko. He's a kid from Timmins, Ontario. He's never been in an airplane in his life. And suddenly he goes to the Pacific Coast Hockey League and he's playing hockey in Hollywood. How the heck did that happen?
Well, Billy and his brother Alec, his older brother Alec, had been playing hockey all their lives. And a scout saw them play and said, "I think these young Barilko boys are going to be able to do fine, and we're going to get them into the Pacific Coast League." So Billy and Alec head out to California. Can you imagine an 18-year-old teenager hopping on a plane for the first time and going all the way to Los Angeles? So they go out and start playing. Alex with one team and Billy's with the Hollywood Wolves, and they're having a great time.
And somehow, I guess, he got traded to another minor league team in Pittsburgh. The Leafs have an injury. He gets called up from Pittsburgh to the Leafs, and suddenly he's in the big show. Yes?
The call was, we need a defenseman in Pittsburgh. We're the American Hockey League affiliate. And he gets to Pittsburgh, and it's called, no, just keep going northbound. The Leafs need a defenseman. So he eventually gets into Toronto, and he never left. He was there for 4.5 years.
Isn't that something? Okay, Mark, come on back in here. Bill's 1951 Stanley Cup winning ring. Do you have that?
It's believed that that's the ring that's part of the collection, and it was never sized, obviously, to Bill. It was given to them after the goal was scored, and so it's believed to be the ring that he was given after he could succumb to the plane crash.
Right. Okay, Mark. Now we got to follow up on that item over, as we're looking at it at the right of the screen, but over your left shoulder. That's the puck that Barilko put behind Jerry McNeil, the goaltender of the Montreal Canadiens. Game 5, overtime. Every game in that series, incidentally, went into overtime. Amazing. Never happened before, never happened since. But there's controversy because the Hockey Hall of Fame thinks they have the puck. You think you've got the puck. What's the story?
Well, I think that story has changed actually. With Kevin working with the Hall of Fame, we've had some discussions about this, and it's believed that the Hall of Fame is now officially recognizing this as the puck, and that's because the puck that was given to the Hockey Hall of Fame. And keep in mind, back then things were given on handshakes. We didn't have the ability to look into things like we do today. So the Hockey Hall of Fame's given the puck. They keep it. It's claimed to have been given to them from a boy in a wheelchair who was given the puck from the referee, when in fact, that puck that was given to them, the NHL stopped using in 1942, 9 years before this goal was scored. So, mysteriously, a family comes out in 2015 and says, hey, guys, we have the puck. We're not a big hockey family. We're not, they've definitely got some money. They don't need the money, so there's no reason for them to make this up. And it turns out that their family, the Donahue family, which owned a very famous pub in Hamilton, the Wellington Pub, and they turned around and their grandfather had 4 tickets to the game, took them to the game, took their father, their uncle, and him and a driver to the game. And when the goal was scored, Harry, their son, which is the Donahue boys' father, had asked his dad, Jeremiah, to run down on the ice to possibly get the puck. And as he went down to the ice, his father said, sure, yeah, absolutely, see if they'll let you on the ice. He hopped on the boards, went over, grabbed the puck, and the rest is history.
All right, Kevin, I want you to pick up the story because I gather we know that the puck that is in Mark's basement is the puck because of the logo on it. Can you compare the logo on that puck to the one in the Hall of Fame right now?
Well, Mark is exactly right. The provenance of the puck at the time when it was given to the Hockey Hall of Fame, it was, as Mark said, it was on a handshake. It was handed to the curator with the story behind it. Sounded credible. We don't do the same kind of provenance. They didn't do the same kind of provenance then that we certainly do now. That puck was predating the one that Bill Barilko would have used to score the Stanley Cup winning goal. So this one has the story, but what has happened that's really curious is that Paul Pascal, who's just the most extraordinary historian, especially when it comes to video, was able to denounce the story that the Hall of Fame had because he saw the footage and the referee was skating away and the puck was still in the net. And there is an image, you can't say a face, but there's an image reaching over, skidding across the ice, reaching over to get the puck. And so it seems probable, almost 100% so, that the Donahue family has the Barilko puck, and that the one in the Hall of Fame that was purported to be the Stanley Cup winning goal is unlikely to be so.
Because I gather the one in the Hall of Fame has a logo on it that they stopped using in the 1940s. And this goal, of course, was scored in 51.
Yes, exactly. But with the internet, with the kind of research that's been done, all of a sudden these things that weren't known before are certainly becoming well known to those who are involved in research. And that's one of the ways that we found out as well.
Okay. I want to now ask our director, Sheldon Osmond, to bring up a picture of one of the most iconic sites. There's that word again. We're going to use that a lot tonight. This is one of the most iconic sites in Timmins, Ontario. This is Bill Barilko's final resting place. Frank, he finally got the funeral he deserved in 1962 when his remains were found. And you were there that day at the funeral, were you not?
Yes, I was. At that time, we'd moved from Timmins to London, Ontario, and we got the call. The crash site's we think the crash site's been found. Then it was confirmed. Then there were plans, and we up to Timmins we went for a funeral, and it was a surrealistic situation to be burying somebody who had died 11 years earlier.
Who was at the funeral?
Well, I remember some of the pictures show all the family members, of course, and a large congregation from Timmins and Schumacher. I know Alan Stanley was one of the pallbearers. And that's the one individual I can recall.
Alan Stanley, of course, a great defenseman for the Leafs for many, many years, Stanley Cup champion as well.
And another Timmins boy.
And another Timmins guy, yes, indeed. Well, one of the reasons, there are reasons and then reasons and more reasons why I would suggest this is the most iconic goal scored in Maple Leaf history. Never mind that it won a Stanley Cup. Never mind the association with Billy's disappearance shortly after scoring the goal. But then, a little over 25 years ago, there was a little group out of Kingston, Ontario that wrote a song that brought the story to a whole new generation. 50 Mission Cap, Tragically Hip. Mr. Director, if you would.
didn't win another till 1962, the year he was discovered.
Love that song. Kevin, how influential do you think that song has been in keeping Bill Barilko's legacy alive?
Extraordinary, just massive, because it took it into the popular. It brought it into popular culture after being long forgotten for so long. I don't know how well Bill Barilko would have been remembered had that song not come out. Brought it to a new generation, a third generation perhaps as well. It's ubiquitous across radio airwaves now. Whether you were a Toronto Maple Leaf fan or you know who Barilko was, you know those lyrics. And so it just opened up the floodgates again to recognizing the story and who Bill Barilko was and what he meant to this city.
Suzanne, what do you think?
Oh, yes, definitely. I really feel that I recall Uncle Bob saying that I believe that Todd Sloan had just sort of had tied it up just minutes or so before the overtime, and it went into overtime, and then Barilko scored. And that's pretty exciting for when you're right there at that moment in the scene. But it always helps that when we want to keep continuing history, that we bring it back, as Kevin says, into pop culture or into today's living life. And I definitely agree with what Kevin has to say about that beautiful song.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Todd Sloan just, I think with about 32 seconds left in the third period of that game, tied the score for the Leafs, sending the game to overtime, and then Billy scored less than 3 minutes into the overtime, I think. Frank, I wonder if you would share the story of of how your mother found out the Tragically Hip were playing a concert in Mississauga where she lived at the time. She goes to the arena, and what happens?
Well, Mom tells me that she's heard about this group. Did I know anything about them? And I said, Mom, I've never heard of Tragically Hip. We're living in Mississauga at the time, and with 3 kids, we got a busy household. I'm not keeping in touch with music. So Mom says, well, I'm going to go over to the Hershey Center and introduce myself. So she knocks on one of the doors, and a guard says, what do you want? She says, well, I'm Bill Barilko's sister, and I'd like to meet the Tragically Hip. He says, well, a lot of people would like to do that, but Barilko's sister, let me go and see if they can see you. Well, goodness knows, the door opens up again. Mom gets escorted down the corridor, and the Tragically Hip are ecstatic to meet her, and she's ecstatic to meet them. And they spent a bit of time talking about Billy, and they said, well, we would like you to come back to the concert. And she said, no, I've got to get home and make dinner for my husband.
Now, Mark, I think it was, and somebody will correct me if I've got this wrong, but I think at the 50th anniversary of the Barilko goal, in other words, 20 years ago, they had a fantastic ceremony at Center Ice at the Air Canada Centre. The Tragically Hip was out there. Frank's mother, Anne, Barilko's sister, was out there as well. And Gord Downie presented to Anne a framed picture of his handwritten lyrics of 50 Mission Cap. My question for you, Mark, is where is that framed picture today?
It's located just to the side of me here as a part of the exhibit. Very honored to have that as a piece, and it grabs a lot of attention. A lot of people are gravitated to the fact that and myself included. I didn't know who, the Tragically Hip had written this song until that, but I knew the words, and then once I realized it was Barilko, my friends and everybody just gravitated to the story as well.
Mark, I know I'm about to use a football analogy, which one should never do when talking hockey, but I'd like to pull an audible here. Is it close enough for you to be able to grab right this moment and show us what it looks like? Because it's Gord Downie's handwritten. Yeah, go ahead. Go grab it and show it to us. Gord Downie handwrote these lyrics, and I would love for people to be able to see what it was. And this is the framed item that was presented by Gord Downie to Ann Klisenich 20 years ago on the occasion of the 50th anniversary of the Barilko goal. Okay, Sheldon, let's see the shot. Here it is right now. There it is. My goodness, what a collector's item that is. Invaluable, Mark, invaluable. And all the members of the HIP have signed it, and there's the handwritten lyrics. Outstanding. Thank you for that. Okay, in our remaining moments here, Frank, you were 2 months old when your uncle disappeared, and I wonder how often you think to yourself, My God, I sure wish I would have had a chance to meet this guy.
I think about that about every year on the anniversary of the goal. If there's one person I wish I could have met in my lifetime, and as I was growing up, it was Billy Barilko, my uncle. To see him continue his career as a Toronto Maple Leaf, and then what happened afterwards. But I was never given that opportunity.
Kevin, because of your book and the years of research that went into that, I mean, you may know Bill Barilko better than anybody else alive today, even though you obviously never met him either. How often do you think to yourself, man, I wish I'd had a chance to meet that guy?
On a regular basis, Steve. I really do. I felt like I knew him, and I felt like he was someone that would be just a dear friend as well. You have to remember that we lost him at the age of 24, so he really was a man boy. And all of the players he was colleagues with said that he was the life of the party. He was kind of like, and I'll use a reference, like Weird Al Yankovic, I guess probably more like Spike Jones, insofar as he was in the dressing room and always so cheerful and changing the lyrics to songs and just making everybody have a lot of fun. He loved life. He was just a terrific young man, quality young man, raised properly, and a real loss to all of us.
Mark Farrell, let me give you the last word on this. You have got so many spectacular items there. What's the plan for your basement?
Well, unfortunately, I was a victim of the Maple Leaf Gardens sex scandal as a young boy. And so I would like to find a way to use this exhibit to help raise some money for awareness so that other people can see, learn the story, and stay on top of it. Hopefully, maybe to raise some money for the Canadian Cancer Society as well, because my dad's a cancer survivor.
Wonderful. I can't thank all of you enough for gathering together virtually and joining us on this 70th anniversary of this momentous occasion. I would remind people, Kevin Shea's book is called Barilko Without a Trace. It's the best thing ever written on this. And if you're a Montreal Canadiens fan and you want the other side of the story, in the pressure of the moment, remembering Jerry McNeil, because he was the guy in the picture, as they say. He was the guy who gave up the winning goal and had to live with that for the rest of his life. It was written by his son, David McNeil, and that's a good read as well. Frank Klicinich, Suzanne Primo, Kevin Shea, Mark Farah. Happy anniversary, everybody. 70 years on from the most iconic goal in Maple Leafs history.
Go
Thank you
Leafs,
so
go.
much.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario. CPA Ontario is a regulator, an educator, a thought leader, and an advocate. We protect the public. We advance our profession. We guide our CPAs. We are CPA Ontario. And by viewers like you. Thank you.